Especially Pittsburgh. Yeah. Somehow I found a I must have read something that it was in Florida or done something in Florida. Okay, maybe that's what I Oh, Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. Yeah. I haven't spent some time there, but I almost got a job there once upon a time.
Somehow they found that big regal thing again. It's like
it seems like a party Midwestern city, you know? Yeah, well, we think of ourselves as East Coast. I hear about it like the top of the line.
You have a great bookstore there, right? White Whale. I don't know why they grabbed my eye. Like I saw them online.
Thank you so much.
I know Alicia, she that's how I started.
I think it is too.
Good morning. Good morning.
There you go. We'll get you guys to sign up.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. On behalf of Virginia Humanities and the Virginia Festival of the Book, welcome. My name is Elizabeth Birdsall, and I'm thrilled to be here to moderate this morning's panel featuring Julietta Singh, Taylor Harris, and Jan Beatty. Before I introduce our speakers, we've got some housekeeping to do. Please silence your cell phones. If you're a tweeter, give the festival a shout out with with hashtag VA Book Fest. You can tell I'm not a tweeter. Or hashtag VA Book 2022. The festival is free of charge, not free of cost. Please, fellow book lovers, consider supporting the festival with a donation at vabook.org. Please also take a moment to fill out a program evaluation. This may seem quotidian, but the festival really does use it to try and improve everyone's experience from author to audience members. You can find the evaluations online at vabook.org/feedback or by using the QR code on the back of your program. That's the funny square on the back of your program that you can take a photograph of and it'll scan it. A word about COVID precautions. In order to keep all in our community as safe as possible, please keep your masks on at this event. The speakers and I have each had a negative test result this very morning. We've got our masks off so that you may better hear us, but we will mask up before book signing and mingling. Speaking of which, this is my favorite part of housekeeping. Please support our authors and our local booksellers by buying these books. You can get them right here on site. There's a bookseller at the back of the room, and our authors will be available for book signing after the program. So now to introduce this morning's panel. Entitled Exploring Family Bonds, this panel groups together recent work from Julietta Singh, Taylor Harris, and Jan Beatty that explore a range of related themes, including how we build family, the ties between identity and blood history, and parenting through unknown futures. Each author brings a unique story, style, and experience to the broad genre of family memoir. I invite the audience to allow their gorgeous, incisive prose to cut apart and reassemble your own ideas about what makes or unmakes a family. I will introduce each author immediately before they present their work. Please hold any questions until the end of the program. We will have ample time for conversation and audience questions, and we will begin with Julietta, and then hear from Taylor, and then Jan. Julietta.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to introduce you. Yeah. Sorry about that, thank you.
Julietta Singh is a decolonial scholar and nonfiction writer whose work engages the enduring global effects of colonization through attention to ecology, inheritance, race, gender, and sexuality. She works and teaches across the fields of post-colonial and decolonial studies, queer studies, the ecological humanities, experimental feminisms, and creative nonfictions. She has published extensively in academic journals and has written 2 previous books. The Breaks, which she will present on now, is her most recent publication. Now I can say, Juliette. Here's her.
I saw a little paragraph there, so I thought you might be missing something.
I appreciate that.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this rainy, gloomy Charlottesville day. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is my first in-person event since the pandemic, so thanks for the honor of being here with me for what feels very momentous. I am going to read I'm going to skip around from the very beginning of my book, which takes the form of a long letter to my daughter about race, inheritance, and mothering at the end of the world. I also want to say if there's anyone here who is financially insecure or any graduate students who are underfunded and the book would be meaningful to you, please approach me and I'll hook you up with a copy. In the run-up to Thanksgiving last year, you learned a whitewashed story at school about how the first peoples of this land were happy to give their sacred spaces to the consumptive force of European men in the name of civilization and progress. You came home from school and unzipped your backpack, revealing with artistic pride a picture book you had colored and stapled yourself. Your kindergarten teacher had asked you to color in a little Native American girl, then a Native American boy, followed by a Pilgrim girl and boy, each one garbed in their traditional attire. I admired the craft of your book, a swell of parental pride coursing through me as I witnessed the evidence of my progeny doing and making things in the world beyond me. And I relished that you had colored all 4 children brown like you. As you flipped through the pages of your book, you narrated a sad story about how much the Pilgrims had suffered when they arrived on this land. I felt a surge in my body, an immediate, unstoppable need to explain the other forms of suffering elided by this disturbingly singular narrative. I described some of the impacts of this arrival on Indigenous peoples, the European theft of their autonomies, cultures, languages, and lands. I explained that colonial practices dramatically changed how humans live in relation to this land. And I told you that this historical moment of colonial contact was crucial to understanding how we arrived at the global ecological crisis we face today. I'll never forget the way you looked at me then, your head slightly tilted to one side, your eyes wide in bewilderment. We were sitting on the landing at the top of the apartment stairs, the contents of your backpack scattered around us. This is not what my teacher told us, you said with unmistakable agitation. I knew that for the first time you were confronting the existence of conflicting worldviews, a vital gulf between your formal education and your maternal one. That's okay, I said. My job as your mother is to tell you these stories differently and to tell you other stories that don't get told at school. I pressed on to explain that history is a story based on a version of the past. Can you hear the word story in history? I asked. You nodded slowly, a little body in deep rumination. These stories need to be told from the perspectives of those who have been most damaged by history. These other stories, I said, can teach us how to keep living. From the onset of your public education, you have been learning what it means to be American through a manicured version of history that keeps European whiteness at its center. This form of education willfully forgets the lives that were destroyed, the bodies that were brutalized, and the cultures and traditions that were abolished or displaced to establish that center space. It tells you a singular and continuous narrative of Western capitalist expansion, obscuring the bleak fact that much of what we call progress has been a direct and unrelenting line to the wholesale destruction of the earth. Against this obliterating narrative, I glean from the fragments in an attempt to teach us otherwise. I scrambled to harvest alternative histories omitted by the textbooks, the histories of those who have faced annihilation and lived towards survival.
Learning to mother at the end of the world is an infinite toggle between wanting to make you feel safe and needing you to know that the earth and its inhabitants are facing a catastrophic crisis. This morning, you went off to school to learn discipline, to hone your reading and writing skills, to study official state history. I am at my desk sipping tea, turning over words. The birds are chirping outside my window. You, me, the birds. We are all creatures living as though we have a future, as though tomorrow will continue to resemble today. Meanwhile, plans are being devised to drive the marketplace forward when the Earth's non-renewable resources are exhausted. Scientists and businessmen are plotting to colonize the moon in a relentless drive to create an alternative human habitat when this one can no longer foster us. There is no consideration of ceasing extraction, only a maniacal mission to discover other worlds to plunder. When the Earth is rendered uninhabitable, when extractive capitalism leads to wholesale ecological collapse, we will not be chosen for this new other planetary world. We, along with nearly everyone else, will be left in ecological destruction to scavenge what we can from the wreckage or to perish. The truth is, I am glad not to be among the chosen ones. I know in my body the cost of discovering new worlds, the brutal violence that accompanies the colonial mission. No, I do not want to leave this planet. What I want is another world. And when I say another world, I mean this one, toppled and reborn. On the 6th day of a 9-day work trip, the longest period I have been away from you, I FaceTime home and find you deeply engaged in an act of fruit sculpting. You tell me you are making a Powhatan village. The Powhatan people are represented by banana slices, and apple skins make up their shelters. Off to the side of the village, you have crafted colonial ships by slicing kiwis in half, gutting their insides, and attaching the skins to the little fruit boats to serve as sails. You have crafted rough waters out of banana peels and a wall of carved apple manatees that surround the kiwi ships on 3 sides. What's happening in this scene? I asked. The rough waters and manatees are pushing the Europeans back home, you say earnestly. I am blown away to witness this art making against the state. This anti-colonial fruit installation that is also a fantasy of organically reversing history. What I love most is that in your historical revisioning, you move us beyond the subjugated histories of indigenous resistance to colonial force. Instead, you turn your attention to the sea, letting it emerge as an actor in the opposition to the colonial mission. Your artwork veers me away from the anthropocentric position, carefully and imaginatively invoking what the earth itself might desire. Last year, as we walked to school hand in hand through the lush green streets of Richmond, Virginia, you asked me with stark curiosity whether you would have been a slave had you lived here in another time. The question did not come as an absolute surprise because I knew you had been studying Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson in kindergarten. Only months into your formal education, and you were already immersed in a top-down history that tells you Black folks became free through the noble gestures of white presidential slave owners below that has always made freedom possible. It is a history that will not tell you how hard and through what means Black and brown people have fought to be free, how crushing the blows of European progress have been to those subjugated to its force. Your question was hard for me to answer because its limbs extended in so many directions, because it required not a single answer, not a reductive no or yes, but a careful inventory of moving bodies. Some of those bodies came with colonial minds, some were discovered here and brutally eradicated or displaced, some were captured from elsewhere and forced across the ocean, and others came from distant lands to save or improve their lives. At its root, your question was a way of asking where your body fits into the racial economy of this nation, and the answer to that question must necessarily be a dynamic one. I tightened my grip on your hand, slowed our pace, and drew you close. I told you that people like us did not live here during the time of slavery. But already I was wondering about the words I used, people like us. Who was this us I had summoned to make sense of things for you? At the time, I had undoubtedly meant those critically impacted by the force and manipulation of British colonialism in India. But my utterance also implicated the Jews who were exterminated and those who narrowly escaped the Nazi camps. Our blood is laced with modern histories of unbelievable violence. It is a strange and hybrid brew that you will feel in your body across your life, as I have always felt it in mine. Our particular histories are those of imperial conquest, mass extermination, and nearly unimaginable forms of racial and religious violence. But here in America, it is toward the local histories of genocide, slavery, forced religious and cultural conversion, and internment that we must reach in solidarity. Each of us who emerges from the subjugated ends of history, who stands outside whiteness but is also saturated by its power, shares something not only at the surface of our bodies, but also deep within them. I am writing to you and to future you. I am writing to the 6-year-old girl you are now, the one who both insists on her unequivocal need for my body and loves to perform her independence from me. I am writing also to the becoming being that you are, the one who will face a world in ruin and undoubtedly wonder over my place in all this destruction. Over half a century ago, James Baldwin repeatedly wrote and tore up drafts of a letter penned to his nephew and namesake, until he was able to articulate the plain, pitiless fact that the younger James would face profound struggle for no other reason but the fact of his blackness. More recently, Ta-Nehisi Coates followed Baldwin to elucidate for his son the brutal truth of state violence inflicted against Black bodies. It's no coincidence that Baldwin and Coates both have felt an urgency to write to 15-year-old boys tipping into manhood, their Black paternal mouths spilling with revolutionary promise as they equipped their boys to face a criminal justice system designed to exploit and devour them. I write to you with a different urgency. I write not with the immediate fear that you will be gunned down by police in the streets, or that you will be metabolized by the prison industrial complex, but with an adjacent set of fears about being a brown girl in a country that thinks and feels race through a sharp binary. I write with an impossible desire to prepare you for political and ecological catastrophe. I write because the burden of history, the indispensable need to keep us all from coming apart, keeps falling on the shoulders of girls and women of color. I write because, as mother and daughter, we are unmistakably entwined, and because I know, which is to say, I feel in the most microbial registers of my body, that the shape of our entwinement will need to be radically reformed as we fight global patriarchy, extractive capitalism, and indiscriminate planetary destruction. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julietta. Taylor Harris is a writer, wife, and mom to 3. Her creative nonfiction offers intimate excavations of the sweeping, clashing, and resounding structural enmeshments of spiritual faith, education, healthcare, race and racism, parenting, and partnering. Until recently, Taylor lived here in Charlottesville, and the town itself appears as a protagonist in much of her work. Taylor's essays have appeared in O Quarterly, The Washington Post, Long Reads, The Cut, Romper, Parents, McSweeney's, and other publications. This Boy We Made is her first book. Taylor.
Thank you so much. I like to also sometimes say, like, oh, that will definitely be my last book, too, because this book is like a lot of work. Julia, that was beautiful. I sort of want to cede my time to you, and I know you just met Jocelyn Johnson, but your work really reminds me a lot of her work, so I hope you guys make that being here. I see so many familiar faces. And I'll shout out Jocelyn Johnson one more time. I know she's here somewhere, but she, you might know her as like the famous author with the Netflix deal. But what is so cool, that's cool. But what is even cooler to me is that she was my son's, like one of his first teachers. She was his preschool art teacher. And when you're walking in with a student who has these needs that are hard to put a finger on, are hard to describe or label, and you see this like beautiful Zen Black woman walk into the hallway and greet you, it just like it still does something to me. And he was so safe and blossomed so much in her classroom. So that's something that not everybody knows about her. So I think that just means a lot to me. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts, and I actually changed based on what Julietta read. There's a part that I kind of want to include, so just hang in there with me. I think what you should know from the beginning, if you haven't read about my story, is that Topes, my son, his real name is Christopher, was born pretty it was pretty uneventful. I was here at Martha Jeff. He didn't weigh as much as my daughter had. He's the second born. But there was nothing too concerning. Around 6 to 12 months, he starts to slide off the growth chart. And the doctors think that we can fix that by like feeding him avocados, and just anything with butter and oil. And I joke to my family, I say something like, well, at least one of us can drink all the milkshakes we want. And it's still this very light thing. And then as he nears 2 years old, he wakes up on April Fool's Day, and he's just sort of staring. He doesn't cry for us. My husband picks him up and hands him to me, and I nap with him for like an hour. I'm like, this is great. I get another hour of sleep, and then he wakes up and he just starts chugging water. He won't eat. I put him on the ground to change his diaper in the living room, and he falls asleep again. I rush him to the doctor, later to the ER. We find out that he had a blood sugar of 27. Low normal, if you don't regularly check in with yours, is about 70. Should be about the lowest you probably go and feel good. And that just started our journey. And I thought what I thought would be an easy fix, sort of like maybe he has diabetes, or not that that's an easy fix, but just a simple, like, true answer. We just never really figured it out, and the more we tested, the more things showed up as abnormal. And then he starts showing signs of developmental delay. And so where I start here is I'm taking him, I finally got him in. You guys know, living here maybe, that there's like 1 or 2 developmental pediatricians, and I feel like the line like wraps around the hospital. And so like I've finally gotten him in. He's like about to turn 3, and this is the big deal, because I'm like, if anybody can figure out what's going on, it's a developmental pediatrician, because they know like the body, they know like the developmental milestones. So like I like got my family together, like it was like a picture day, and I was like, you guys, like, we are going to go in here and we are going to leave with our answers. And so join us here. The doctor, I call him Dr. Perry, because Charlottesville is so small. Okay, so he drew a horizontal line. Can you draw this for me? He asked. Topes did. Then he drew a vertical line. How about this? Topes' lines were shakier, fainter, made with a fisted grip, but they were there. Well, that's good news, Dr. Perry said. The fact that he was able to copy those lines means his intelligence is at least on the low side of average. Had he just handed us a life vest or shot a hole through our boat? He finished examining Topes in about 10 minutes, and then set Paul and me down while Topes and Elliot played. When I look at his records, the poor growth, carnitine deficiency, history of hypoglycemia, and now global developmental delay, he's got something. We're just not smart enough to figure it out yet. Something global, yet. This wasn't a fluke. Topes had stumped the best. I processed this much before the tunnel started to narrow. Given your levels of education, he's certainly an outlier. Outlier. Like begets like, each seed after its own kind. I think he should see genetics again for whole exome sequencing, and he should have every new wave of genetic testing that becomes available. Science is moving so fast, and what we don't know now, we might know in 10 years. Maybe one day somebody in Europe will discover the Christopher syndrome. Every new test, Europe, my boy, as a syndrome. And then as the conversation wound down, if you were my son, I'd go ahead and schedule a brain MRI. As I sat across from Dr. Perry, I heard outlier as a painful marker of deficit. What did it mean that our son looked small but fine on the outside, yet was struggling to communicate, to understand? What if he was lonely or frustrated or scared and couldn't tell us? What if the world was closed off to him in ways that remained wide open to me? This type of limitation was not what I'd imagined for my child. And painful path between mystery and atypical, which was really no path at all, was not the one I thought I'd travel. The first time I heard the term liminal, I was 18, sitting in an African American Studies 101 class at the University of Virginia. A tall and slender Professor Penningroth, his complexion like my mother's relatives, had written the words middle passage in the center of a blackboard. He walked us through not just the number of black bodies taken or the number of years over which they were stolen, but what it might have been like to be yanked into a void, to live or die between what was and what would be. Liminal comes from the Latin word for threshold, when your life, your customs, your expectations are ripped away, as in the case of slaves, or if they disintegrate through grief and mystery, you stand at this threshold. On one side, I see the disintegration of my assumptions about myself, motherhood, my children. In the space between, the space of not yet, I tread water while going to doctor's appointments and Googling, while noticing illnesses or quirks or developmental delays, while waiting for one doctor on the right ship to come scoop us up from the depths. On the other side, who knows? I'd always assumed the other side was an answer, a new set of boundaries, a new territory to navigate and accept. I'm not sure I would know the other side now if it slapped me in the face. How do you recognize the thing you're looking for when it has no name, no shape? Someday, someone in Europe. This space can be relentless in its power to hold my imagination captive, to dash what's beautiful and true to pieces. Because as I sit across from the doctor and hear outlier, as I push off into the deep, I do not think about the way Topes wakes up early one morning to put together a puzzle all by himself, nor how he intuitively cups my face in his hands and gazes into my eyes. I cannot yet know he is capable of ordering a metal yo-yo off Amazon without any instructions. Because Topes will think about and do things we would never think of or be able to do at such a young age or ever. Outlier. Somehow these truths deserve to make it to the other side, even if my hands are heavy with doubt. Moses instructed the Israelites to remember the words of the God who had delivered them from slavery. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. If the great doctor never comes along in his great boat, if I never get to the other side, I want someone to find me. I want them to see every dream for Topes stamped across my forehead, the names of his gifts written on my forearms. I was not planning to read that part, but it's one of my favorites, so let me find something else to offer. I think I'm going to read, sorry, do you guys have a sister's text thread? Mine is blowing up my watch as I'm reading. My 2 older sisters. My wrist won't stop vibrating. Anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from our appointment with genetics. So we did go back to genetics, and I love our genetic counselor, Shelly Towner. She's still a geneticist or a genetic counselor here in town. And I think when you walk into a genetics appointment, you know, you're asked this question of like, without them exactly saying, it's sort of like, what do you bring with you here? And with that comes like, what are your expectations and your hopes for this this child who is biologically yours. And so I think all of that comes into the appointment with you, even though they're asking you more like biological family history sort of questions. And so I'll read a little bit from the genetics appointment that really started to change our lives. New genetic tests could sever the rope from around my waist. If the doctors found mutations in Tosa's genes, we'd be forced to look back to conception, preconception, even God, who is way bigger than any mistake I might have made as a mother. If these problems had been there in the beginning, then I'd be free to respond to rather than atone for. God himself, the maker of bodies, would be the ram in the bush or scapegoat, and my sense of self would survive. Even if my hope for a diagnosis had been battered, our search didn't feel complete. No one had sent us home or told us we were out of options. The next wave of tests started with Shelley. Tall with an Elsa braid that hung over her shoulder, Shelley greeted us and sat down at the computer. Her eyes were Disney blue and direct, but not unkind. I resisted her role at first. She was young and engaging, but she wasn't the geneticist. And the only thing worse than not knowing how to tell your son's story, to relay the scope of puzzling issues without getting lost in details, is muddling through that story twice in one day. It turned out Shelley wasn't a resident or medical student. She was a genetic counselor, guiding families by way of Punnett squares and lab orders through what genetics had to offer them. Is there any chance you two are related, she asked us. We don't think so. Paul and I laughed, but I quietly added another possible failure to my list. Failure to marry someone outside my own family. We do have some Harrises on both sides. It strikes me now that the question she really asked us was, are the odds already stacked against your child? I'm sorry, she said, we have to ask everyone that. Beneath that question lurked another I'd already started to ask myself. What were my expectations of my child and his body, of myself and my body? Had I expected near perfection or ease? And what about the man I'd fallen for and so carefully prayed about marrying? Did I expect him to be free of misspelled genes? My expectations didn't matter to the lab where Shelley would send Tosa's blood. It could have been the precision of Shelley's outfit, a sleeveless blouse and pencil skirt, or the clarity and quickness of the words coming from her straight white teeth. But in that moment, I found comfort in what I perceived to be the hard lines of genetics. The department, housed on the 5th floor of the Children's Hospital, might as well have been an exclusive VIP club to me. These doctors could pinpoint with scary precision where a gene took a left turn, where it picked up an extra letter or left one out, and what that change meant. While we'd seen the chief before, we had more information about Tosa's development this time, as well as a strong referral from Dr. Perry. Tos either had a genetic disease or he didn't. We'd just have to wait to find out. Shelley methodically led us through a list of questions. Paul and I each answered for our own sides of the family because together we had made this person. We believed God had created him, but knew our boy wasn't exactly made from dust. Does anyone in your family have thyroid issues, learning disabilities, autoimmune disease, anemia? I cycled through every person I knew in my family, every story I'd inherited. Most answers were an easy no, but Paul and I were careful to consider a cousin or niece on one side or the other who might have struggled in school or been hospitalized with fevers. Shelley had tossed us a net, and our job was to place any debris, no matter how old or ragged, into that net and allow her and the geneticist to sort through the pieces. And I think I will end there for now.
Thank you, Taylor. Jan Beatty is an astonishingly prolific poet and essayist. She also has worked as a waitress, a welfare caseworker, an abortion counselor, and in maximum security prisons. She is the managing editor of Mad Books and directs creative writing at Carlow University, where she runs the Mad Women in the Attic writing workshops and is distinguished writer in residence of the MFA program. In addition to the 6 books written before American Bastard, Jan's writing has appeared in the New York Times Sunday Magazine, Poetry, BuzzFeed, North American Review, and numerous anthologies, including Best American Poetry. American Bastard is her first memoir. Jan.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? In the back? Okay. Okay. Thanks to Elizabeth Taylor and Julieta. We have such different things that we're writing, and I think that's great. And I really appreciate being on this panel and being here. And thank you for being here. I was worried that it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Who's going to come? and I was assured that this is a very serious conference or festival, which I knew. 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay. I guess that's my issue.
I got coffee.
Okay. So American Bastard is a memoir about adoption. That's me on the front, age 6, with a toy shotgun shooting people. So that's how it started. And my personality was formed early. And I worked at Carleton University for 15 years. It's a Catholic university, primarily women. And when we announced the publication of American Bastard last year at Carlisle, it shut down the email server at Carlisle, and which is crazy, but and they wanted to know, what is this bastard stuff you're sending out? And they said, this is the director of the Creative Writing Program's book, and so I'm like, wow, this is going to be interesting. Huh? So, and it has been. So, thank you for coming. I'm going to start with, I'm going to start by saying I was born in a place called Rosalia Asylum, an maternity hospital in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. And it used to be what they would call a home for unwed mothers, which is a dated way to talk about it, but women would go there, have the babies, leave the babies there. And so it also functioned as an orphanage. And I was there the first year of my life, as far as I know. So this is the dedication of the book. This is for the lost ones who never knew where they came from. This is against the ones who pretended the loss never happened. I'm going to read a few short sections, and beginning with a quote by the amazing Wanda Coleman. I hope you know her. Poet laureate of LA for some time. This is Wanda Coleman. I stole it back because it was mine from the get-go. All shook up, a rumble mama thought, and there I was. Take these rhythms as evidence. My splendid rock and roll. This section calls Rosalia Asylum, or let me say, imagines Rosalia Asylum. After the tearing and rolling, you're an infant somewhere in a crib in a room full of cribs. Someone is taking care of you. You don't know who. Who's the person who picks you up? Is it a woman? Is it a nun? There is no story in sight, no same loving face, blood of my blood face. The smells, the feel of the rolling and tearing are gone. Gone where? No face who has your face, no way of knowing who is who, what hands it is. Why are they different every time? There is no bonding taking place. The story is fractured here and forever after. Then strangers come to gaze at you, touch you, wonder about you. They decide to pluck you out of there and make you theirs. These strangers will take your name away and hide it. The government will cooperate. It will take months and months for this baby trade to be completed. A baby in exchange for money. Meanwhile, someone is feeding you. Is it a kind person? What do they smell like? You will never know these hands again. You will be taken to a strange place. People will start calling you the lucky one, the chosen baby. No one sees that your story is gone, that you are being handed off like a football. From now on, everyone will pretend that your first story never existed. They will act and want you to act as if you were one of them. Their blood, their faces, their world. You know that to survive, you will have to do this. You will have to pass. But your new mother has dark hair and brown eyes. Your father has dark hair. Their noses are not like yours. Your white blonde hair shines sickly like the odd light in the back pane. Later, you look at your cousins. They have beautiful long eyelashes, all of them the same. You value how others resemble others. You long for it. In first grade, you refused to make a family tree. Your parents and teachers suggest you make one based on your new family. You refused. I'm going to read a section about meeting my birth mother for the first time. It took me many years to find her, about 10 years to find her. I didn't learn my name, my real name until I was 32 years old. And I hate my real name. My real name is Patrice. I mean, look, I'm not a Patrice. I cannot be a Patrice. It's much too fun for me. Patrice Steiger is my real name. But yeah, I'm keeping Jan Baby. So when I found my birth mother, she didn't want to meet me, and then she did. So this is this first meeting, and I can't read the whole section because of time, but I'll read a hunk of it. Oh, and at the time, this was a while ago, because I was wearing dresses, and I'm not wearing dresses anymore. And I had two dresses. A red dress and a blue dress. I decided to wear the red dress to meet her, and when I got there, she had on the blue dress. So it was. After 2 years, my birth mother has decided to meet with me after seeing an Oprah show on adoption. Why does Oprah wield more power than a flesh and blood daughter? I call my friend Paul, who works at the welfare office in the state office building, and he meets me at a bar in Market Square. It's morning, but we drink 2 shots of cheap whiskey each, and he walks me over to the investment building to meet my birth mother. I'm an alcoholic in recovery for approximately 27 years now. It seems crazy that I would go into that meeting after drinking, but at the same time, it seems that of course I would have a drink first. That was what I did. I meet the social worker who leads me to this closed room. She says, "You have 40 minutes." I walk in and my birth mother has on a blue cotton V-neck dress. It may seem strange to focus on this. At the time, I worked as a waitress, didn't have much money. I owned 2 dresses, a red one and a blue one. I decided to wear the red one to this meeting, and my birth mother is wearing the blue one. This is not about the merely instinctual. This is a book about what happened. It's not as though it's a common dress, a dark blue cotton jersey with a V-neck and a thin tan string belt. There it is on her body, the body that I used to live in, apparently. Apparently, because all of this is shocking, more than strange, it's mind-bending, like the ground is sky and the sky is ground. I don't know how to describe it. I walk in, she jumps up and hugs me, and the hug is the real and unreal mixing somehow. It feels good, but I want to run. I want to get her off of me because who is she and where has she been? We sit on basic chairs a few feet apart in this square room in this office building and start to try to speak about our lives. She is sobbing hysterically, deep, ongoing sobs, and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." It's a shocking and disturbing sight, this woman who I've never seen except at birth, sitting before me crying and crying. She has short, dark blonde hair, light blue eyes. While she sobs, I'm studying her to see if this is someone, finally, someone I might look like. The resemblance is there. It's not overwhelming, but her coloring, her fair skin and bone structure seemed to have some similarity to mine. Well, actually mine to hers. You might think it cold and strange that I'm studying her in detail while she's crying, this woman who supposedly is my mother, but the body and blood is everything, not knowing if there is another person out there who has your blood, who looks like you. That's everything to an adopted child. I was 32 years old when I met my birth mother, but at this first meeting, and still today, I'm the adopted child with a couple pieces of information. You might imagine, you might want to make it a magical, beautiful meeting between mother and daughter. If so, you would be projecting some cultural story into this event. I didn't know this woman who I longed to meet and find. I had some questions. So here I am, sitting across from her, the real and unreal colliding, holes in the air where something alive, something real might come through. 40 minutes. I feel bad for her, but I want her to stop crying. I think this might be the only time I see her. I need to know where I came from. I want the story. How did I get here? How did it happen? Why did she give me away? And the big question, who is my father? I want answers. I tell her I have the same dress at home. You're kidding, she says. No, I'm not. And I ask her where she bought her shoes. Baker, she says. I tell her I have those same shoes at home. Brown, no heels with a strap. Nice shoes. What is that? Does the same blood give us the same fashion sense? It's too strange to take in and still is, like a genetic code leading into a dress store. She starts to talk, and the questions she has are disturbing to me. Did you have a good life? I think, of course I didn't. You gave me away. What are you talking about? I'm just starting my life. What is a good life anyway? I'm suicidal. I struggle to stay alive. Would you call that good? I say, I guess. I mean, it's hard to say. She says, did you do well in school? What is she talking about? Why are we talking about this? I don't care how I did in school. I'm 32 years old. Who cares about this? Obviously, she does. I say, yeah, I got a degree in social work. I'm a waitress now, though. She says, oh, that's wonderful. I'm thinking, what's wonderful about it? We're here in this jacked up room, and you're my fucking mother, and you're not going to get down to it. I don't want to talk about this shit with you. Do you have a boyfriend? She says. That's it. I'm a shell-shocked adoptee and want to like her, and her to like me, but that's it. Yes, I have a boyfriend. But what does that have to do with anything, I say. She draws back, still crying. She says, I just want to know that you have a good life. I know, I say, but I need to know what happened. What happened, she says. Where I came from, who my father is, I say. She starts sobbing uncontrollably and grabs my arm hard. You have to promise me you won't look for him. He's not a nice man. More holes in the air, how to get to something alive, something real. This woman, my mother, who I've never met, grabbing me, asking me to promise something so large. It's too much. She hasn't given me any information. She kept hold of my arm, her voice getting louder. You have to promise me you won't look for him. I promise, I say. I know that I'm lying. I want her to stop. I don't want to lie, but I want her to stop. This is supposed to be about real. This is supposed to be about truth. The time is running down. I say to myself, I'll look for him, and I'll find him. She keeps crying, but starts talking. You have to understand it was a different time. I'm so ashamed. I say there's no reason to be ashamed. She says being pregnant and unmarried was a terrible thing. It brought shame to the family. I had to hide from my whole pregnancy until it was time to have you. She's sobbing again. It was terrible. I didn't have any money. I knew I couldn't give you any kind of life. I'm sorry. I feel bad that she had to go through that. I feel angry that the stupid culture oppressed women like this and still does, but we are so far away from anything I need to know. She's rubbing her hands together, rubbing her hands over her forearms, and looking at her tan, her solid legs, hoping I'll look strong like her when I'm older. I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with having sex or getting pregnant. I'm not upset just tell me how things happened about my father and what looked for him, but can you tell me how you met him? It is one crazy scene. The room so full of wild emotion, it feels full with pressure. Then I look up at this crying woman and try to understand that she is my mother. It's hard to even believe in the present moment. The real seems unreal. I have been searching for years and hoping and believing in this moment, and now finding the body seems like an out-of-body experience, like we are saying sentences that fly past each other, like we are at such cross purposes, blood to blood, dressed in each other's clothes.
Thank you so much. I was going to start the Q&A with a question of my own, but I need a moment after that. So I would like to see if anyone has a question of their own, and if you all aren't ready, then I'll gather myself together and ask a question.
Taylor, there's
Yes.
a lot of consternation about genetic engineering and genetic testing and all that. I know it's come a long way, but it's still a very big black box with genetic engineering and what we should do with it and how we should handle it. And the fact that Congress has been mute about it for 30, 40 years, like with global warming. We sat there knowing that we had to face these facts, and we've sat on our hands for 50 years now.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of me, like, I still see myself as like this, like, I don't know, like a stay-at-home mom with like very like limited information, who like likes to write when she can, and so those big questions, I tend to like look around the room. I'm like, I've got friends in medicine policy, looking at you, Leanne. You could probably answer that on a answer that huge question. But for me, where genetics comes into play is like, as a mom, it's like, when do you stop searching, or do you ever stop searching? Toast still has opportunities through CHOP and Philly to have whole genome sequencing. And so it's something we might get to. We have whole exome sequencing. They can look at even more. But the issue is that they might find 20 mutations and not know what any of that means. And so there's this sense of like, you know, that sort of idea of like pulling scarves out and they just keep coming out. That's kind of where we live. So it's very personal, but then you're also connected to people, because the more people who are tested and who are in those systems, the more we have, you know, a better chance we have of matching with somebody, finding a mutation in common, and knowing something about what that means. So that's more where I live. I think other people could probably do better answering like the politics about it.
Did either of our other authors want to talk about genetics, or?
No.
All right. Okay. All right.
This is your big chance, Julia.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole life.
Next question. Well, Jan, did you ever find your father, Jan?
Yeah, I did find my birth father, but also a crazy story. He's a Canadian hockey player who won 3 Stanley Cups with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he was playing with the Pittsburgh Hornets when he met my birth mother. But I met him in Boston. He was a golf pro after he was a hockey player. I met him, and I was glad I met him. That was a one-time thing. Neither of them wanted to continue anything. And, you know, the adoption community has some word for that. It's about some secondary rejection or something. But I really wasn't looking for another family. I was looking for a story, and my story, and I was looking for answers where I came from. So I ambushed him. I didn't tell him I was coming.
Did he know of your existence? Did he know?
No, but he was nice. I liked him. And I looked a little bit like him. You know. And it explained a lot of things because growing up I was always smashing things and hitting things and I was on the softball team, the basketball team, the tennis team, etc. I majored in phys ed first in college, and my adopted parents were like, "What are you doing?" And so it was such a relief to find out. Oh, okay. So.
In the back, there's a question.
I was just going to ask another question. And do you find generally adoption stories a little bit sanitized? I mean, this is certainly not that. We're just curious as to how you react to the movie.
Well, thank you for asking that. There's a lot of adoption groups. I've been doing a lot of adoption stuff online with people from all over the world, really. It's been really interesting. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I wrote the book, because I can't live with the cultural story about adoption, the generalized cultural story about adoption, which is, adoptees are supposed to be grateful, and that's the currency for being adopted. Supposed to be grateful, and that there's no complication of the story, and so that's all I'm looking for. I'm not anti-adoption. I just want things to be more complicated, like more than open adoption, but talking about what it's like to be adopted, and that's why I wrote the book, because I couldn't find a book like it, which I needed growing up. I really needed.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for all the messages I know about it. So this question is directed to all of you. So a common theme I feel like I got from all the pastors was trying to locate and determine either your place or the place of your loved ones within the world that they exist. As you were all writing your book, what did the process of writing, did that elucidate some answers, did it raise more questions, or both, and how?
Julia, I'd like you to start with answering that, please.
Thanks for the question. I think, I started the book thinking about being an immigrant to the United States and having a child in a nation that feels very polarized in its discussions of race. It seems to me in any kind of popular or mainstream discourse that there's a black and white America. And so I wanted to think with and for her about what the place of brownness in this place might be, and what the promises and potentials of brownness might hold. And in a lot of ways, I think like anything that we write or anything that we undertake, even when it's toward others, it's also for ourselves. So I think part of that was a process of thinking for myself, and every writing project I undertake is a question I don't yet know how to answer. And so this was my attempt to think about a much more capacious version of race, and a way of thinking solidarity that doesn't really exist in a popular in a popular sense. And so I think that was the teaching and learning of the book for me.
Thanks for that question. I did do like a lot of research for this book, which I don't think I realized at first, because you're sort of like I'm writing memoir, like I know it all. So like I went back through a lot of medical records, mine and Joseph's, and it just helped me to see like, dang, like we really tried. Like Taylor, you really tried. Like you tried to look for the answers. We tested so much. And so then I think I moved into a space of, one question I asked in the book is like, if you arrive at the same conclusion later on, but you have so much more like knowledge once you get there, is that a shift? Like, is that sort of an arc? And I think it is. I think I always knew I was Joseph's mom. I know when I knew that when I was pregnant or in the hospital. But after all this searching, coming back to that place and knowing that this boy who has seizures at 5 a.m. or who makes beats at the table for us to dance to,
our final answer, and then we'll.
Okay. What took me, it sounds strange to me, but it took me 20 years to write this book. And, you know, I wrote a book proposal 20 years ago. I have pieces of this that were published in creative nonfiction, but I couldn't continue because of the emotional work of it. And so I had to, you know, I've been in therapy forever, and I think everyone should go to therapy, but I had to go to therapy and work on adoption stuff and go deeper with it in order to handle what I was writing about. And also I needed to become a better writer and grow as a writer in order to figure out a way to write the book. And so I really never thought it would become a book. And so it's been a long process, and it's been, and then I was really kind of terrified. So many emotions around it for me, but terrified that people would be angry with me when I would read it, you know, and that I would run into adoptive parents who would like to scream at me or something. And, you know, that has not happened. But I've had some good conversations, and, you know, it's just about being human. And, you know, it's been really, really a great experience so far with me. And, you know, I'm not saying everything's been beautiful, but, you know, it's been a really grounding thing for me. You know, with many more questions, you know, on the horizon.
Your answer kind of ties into what I found myself wondering about as I listened to all of you, and that is, how hard is it, or what are the pros and cons of making the personal public?
Well, we're actually supposed to be coming to a close right now, but that is kind of like, I don't want to leave that hanging. So, does anyone want to briefly address that enormous question?
I'll just say briefly, I don't like really engaging with people in real life, and so I like writing. So it's actually easier to publish.
She says that she hides behind me.
Take a slightly different track. You know, I get asked about the personal or the intimate a lot. And I think, you know, one of the things about writing intimately or writing personally is that it allows us to think through the political in ways that don't disassociate us from the political world. And so I'm really inspired by a neo-Marxist Italian philosopher named Antonio Gramsci, who wrote in the Prison Notebooks that every one of us has the task, in order to be a thoughtful, engaged, responsible political subject, to understand that we are made up of an infinity of traces, and that it's impossible to ever compile an inventory of those infinite traces, but that it's our ethical and moral and political responsibility to do so. So I think of the internet as a space that has been largely disavowed in political and intellectual thought, and that it's actually the most fruitful and revolutionary space from which we might produce change.
That's amazing.
On that note.
On that note. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our audience. Books are in the back. If you would like to stay for a book signing, we'll all stay up here for, well, until you're done buying books. Thank you.